Everyone's hyping up AI agents right now and even saying things like, an AI agent can replace your entire department, which is honestly ludicrous, and I totally disagree. But I do use AI agents for a few very useful tasks, and I'll tell you one thing. One of the big downfalls of AI agents is they forget everything you said to them in the previous conversation. Every time you open up a new conversation, you have wiped its brain and it knows nothing about you, your customs, your people. It knows nothing. And that can be really frustrating. So how do you fix that? This is a very basic workflow that shows you how you can create a dynamic living agent that has memories and has rules that modify its behavior over time. So let me show you a demo of this. This agent has one useful task that it can do, which is to create a task in ClickUp. It's just for demo purposes. So let's create a task to remind me to update this workflow with more tools. All right. So it's going to run this workflow. We're getting rules from a database and we're sending it to the agent, and then it's creating a task for us. Okay. And you can see the name of the task is update workflow with more tools. Now, what if I want to change the way that it names its tasks? Or what if I want to change the way that it writes a description? Well, I can do that. I can now tell it, hey, next time you write a task name, make it present and active tense, i.e. updating workflow with more tools. And for descriptions, write a basic summary at the beginning, then include a list of action steps in bulleted format. Okay, so I've told it to change its behavior in some way. Now let's see if it does that. Okay, so you can see it has done an insert rule into database. This goes into our rule database, and it says when creating tasks, use present and active tense. So it's basically my instructions, right? Okay, so now I'm going to reset the chat session, start a new one, and let's see if it does that. Create a task to remind me to add more tools to this workflow. All right, so it's created a task in ClickUp. And you can see present tense, adding more tools to workflow, and it's added action steps in a bulleted list format into the content. So this is how this workflow works. Now, if you want a copy of this workflow, I've created a template that you can access. I'll put the link in the description and in this video. And I want to walk you through how this works and how you can use it for yourself. Now, all this does is basically pool the list of rules before sending it to the agent, and then it aggregates everything together with a chat message. So you got your chat message that comes in. I have a basic query to pull in the list of rules, and then I aggregate them into one array of rules. I merge the chat with those rules, and then in the system message for my chatbot, I have a list of rules. And then I have this little expression here that joins them together into a bulleted format. And then I have the schema for the rule database because I actually have a tool that allows the agent to make any query it wants against that database. Now, granted, if I gave anyone else access to this agent, I would not allow it to do this. But I trust myself to not tell it to delete all the rules, so I think we're good. And so that's pretty much it. That's all I say to the agent. What I've done is also added a couple of tools. So we have a Postgres tool to insert a rule into the database. I gave it a simple description saying this should be used when the user corrects you in some way to add a rule that will be included in future prompts. This can be specific to a certain client or a general rule. Make sure to let the user know if you added a rule. And then I have the rule text, and then I hard-coded the agent, and I'll explain that in a second. And then I also have this more open tool here, and this just says use this to get rules and their IDs for modification, and then write any valid SQL query for the Postgres rule database. So it has the schema already in its system message, and it knows how to write SQL queries, so it will be able to do something like that. So let's just do a quick test on that. Can you delete the test rule from the database? So it's not going to know what the ID for that test rule is. So it's probably going to do first a search query to get the ID, and then it's going to, okay, yep, that's the one. I realized I didn't tell it to specify in the query to use the test agent. So it actually pulled quite a few number of rules, and that's why it probably got confused. Now, to fix the problem, all I'm going to do is under here, the rules you are to update and use all have the agent name test agent. Include this in all your queries as a filter. And then I'm also just going to go under the tool description here and say include where agent equals test agent. Okay, and that way it will not get confused. So now it can delete a rule, it can insert a rule. If you want to use Google Sheets, you can do that. It's very simple. In the template, I've made it so that you can just get the rule from the sheet and you can replace this step here. You'll just need to select your worksheet and then filter it down to the agent that you're using for that workflow. And then you have a series of tools. I've actually specified an add, an update, and a delete because you can't just have it do any API call to the Google Sheet. I mean, you could, but that would be kind of complicated. So it's very simple to just add, update, and delete operations in there. So all you need to do is disconnect these Postgres items and then replace them with Google Sheets. Now, so how do you get this set up for yourself? Well, you can download my template and you'll have the workflow ready for you. Then you need to set up your database. So what I've done is I've created a table with a very simple schema. All I have is an ID, a created at. The timestamp's really useful because it tells the agent how recent that rule is, and that's important because you might have rules that kind of override each other over time. So it's good to have that. Then we've got the rule text. So this is what the agent will see. And then you've got agent as text. This can be a drop down or an enumerate. So it could be like a list of possible options. But basically, this allows me to have multiple different agents that all have their own sets of rules. You could also make this a connection to a separate database listing out your agents, and you can maybe add some sort of like many-to-one relationship where a rule can be shared across agents. So there's lots of options there. But for me, it was simple enough to just have a plain text. This is the test agent. So if we were to go in here and say, tell me all the rules in your database along with timestamps, it's going to know that it doesn't have timestamps, and so it's going to execute a query, and you can see that it properly only gets the one rule for the agent, and rule ID 38 created at. So this is a really simple thing to implement with every single agent you create. And honestly, if you just use this as a boilerplate for every agent, then it's going to make it really easy so that all of your agents have this auto updating rule database, and you can keep adding new behaviors and things to keep in mind. I have one that has like 20 different rules and it remembers them all, no problem, and actually adheres to them. I'm sure at some point of scale it would create some issues. For scalability, you could add in some vector, like a vector database that allows them to pool relevant rules to what they're doing, but there's a lot of stuff that you could do with this. Now, speaking of AI agents, one of the things that I love to do is create an interface for my agent, because honestly, I don't like consuming information through a chat message, especially if I'm doing operations in different tools. I want to be able to see some sort of user interface that makes it easier to read and parse that information. So in another video, I show you how you can make interactive chatbot applications using a tool called Zite. Zite is a really amazing AI builder similar to Lovable, but its big thing is it has no-code integrations with stuff like Google Sheets and Airtable, so you can quickly build an app that actually has a backend from one of your favorite no-code applications. They are adding a lot more integrations over time. You can see they just have a few right now, but they're working on more. They currently have a wait list, but they will be opening that up pretty soon. So let me show you an example of something I was able to create in Zite for my AI agent. So this is accessing more sophisticated ClickUp agent that I have, and I can just say create an internal. So it's going to think about this. Okay, so we got this message back, and we also have a button here, and you can click that button and it'll open up a modal that shows you more information about the task. I haven't actually connected it to the data source yet, but it's very, very simple to do this. And the reason this works is N8N has this option on the agent where you can return intermediate steps. And if you take a look at the output, you can see that it shows every single tool call that happened, as well as data from that tool call. So you can basically instruct Zite that when a response is received, if it sees a tool call, it should show it in a certain way. Like if it adds a rule to the database, it should have like an added rule checkmark button or something like that. So if you want to learn how to create an interface like this for yourself, I have a video about how I created an interface for working with OpenRouter, which is basically a API provider that allows you to access any AI model from one API key, which is really useful for a lot of reasons. And I basically create a better version of their interface within Zite to use for my own purposes. I also give you the template so you can clone it and use it for yourself. So if you want to dig into that and learn how to make better AI agents that have actual interfaces, you can watch that video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's helpful for you, and I'll catch you on the next one.